All right, let's dive into this explainer. We're looking at a pretty powerful idea today, based on a sermon called The Unwavering Call. And it all starts with something simple, that feeling of being too tired to pray. It turns out that might not just be about fatigue, it might just be the first shot fired in a spiritual battle.
I mean, come on, who hasn't been there? You've had a long day, you tell yourself, okay, tonight's the night, I'm gonna pray, but then your pillow calls your name and you just give in. It feels like a small personal failure, right? You were just too tired. But what if there's more to it than that?
You see, the sermon we're breaking down suggests that feeling, that laziness, isn't just a random weakness. It's actually a tactic. It's the opening move in a conflict that most of the time we don't even realize we're in. So to really understand this conflict, we first have to get a lay of the land. We need to step onto what we can call the spiritual battleground.
And on this battleground, the attacks aren't random. This sermon lays out what it calls the enemy's playbook. And it's not just a single move. It's a whole four-stage strategy. It's designed specifically to derail your spiritual progress, sometimes before you even take the first step.
So how does this playbook actually work? Well, it's kind of like a game of escalation. Stage 1 is super simple. Just stop you from starting. Use the basics. Laziness, distractions, a little bit of doubt. But okay, let's say you push past that. That's when stage 2 kicks in. Make you quit. Suddenly prayer feels boring, it's frustrating, it's a chore. If you manage to power through that, the strategy gets sneakier. Stage 3 whispers in your ear, hey, you've done enough, take a break. It wants you to get complacent. And for those who are the most dedicated, that's when the final trap is sprung. Stage 4, pride. It gets you so focused on your own spiritual achievements that you're set up for a major fall.
Okay, so if that's the battle plan against you, what's your defense? Well, that brings us right to our next section, the fortress of prayer.
And the source material here is really clear. There's no need for some complex, multi-point counter strategy. It all comes down to two foundational defenses that you just can't do without: unceasing prayer and a real, unbroken fellowship with the church.
And this right here is the key. The sermon argues that prayer is so much more than just an activity or a list of things you want. No, it is your fortress, it's your stronghold, it's the one secure place from which you can fight this entire spiritual war.
I mean, listen to this analogy from the sermon. It's just so powerful. Imagine a king. He leaves his palace, his command center, completely unguarded to go fight some battle miles away. It's tactical suicide, right? The enemy will just walk right in the back door and take the throne. The sermon says that is exactly what we're doing when we try to live a spiritual life without prayer. We're abandoning our only stronghold.
And here's another one that just hits the nail on the head. A thief doesn't just waltz in while you're standing there watching. Of course not. First, he has to neutralize you, tie you up. And in the spiritual sense, silencing your prayer life is the same as being bound. It makes you totally helpless while your grace is just stolen away.
So, we've seen the battle, and we've seen the defense, but what is this all for? What's the point of the struggle? Well, that brings us to the purpose behind it all: answering the divine call.
According to this sermon, the call isn't just a one-and-done event. It actually comes in 5 different ways throughout our lives. It starts with that initial teaching, that simple invitation to follow me. It's then kind of made official in baptism. But then come the calls to action, through repentance, which is a call to be cleansed, and even through suffering, which is a call to come back. And then, of course, there's the final call, the big one, the call to glory.
Now, you really got to lean in for this part, because it's one of the most important distinctions in the whole sermon. It frames salvation as this 3-stage process. First, many are called. The invitation basically goes out to everyone. Then, from that big group, some are chosen. These are the ones who actually accept the invitation. But, and this is the absolute core of the message, being called or even being chosen isn't the finish line. The final critical stage is to secure that calling through relentless, unwavering diligence.
And if you want the perfect picture of what this means, just look at this comparison between Eve and the Virgin Mary. Think about it. Eve was chosen in a perfect world, a garden with no sin, and yet she failed to secure her calling. But then you have Mary. She was also chosen, but she had to navigate a fallen world, a world full of sin and thorns. And she didn't just accept her call, she secured it through her faith and perseverance.
This line from the source it says it all, doesn't it? So beautiful. It pictures Mary as this impossible flower of faith that somehow managed to blossom in the harshest environment imaginable, completely surrounded by thorns. And all of this leads us to the final, and I think most powerful part of this whole message. It's this idea that the call for this kind of diligence, well, it has a totally unique urgency right here, right now, in our time.
So, when the scriptures talk about being more diligent, the sermon argues that's not just some generic piece of advice. No, it's a direct challenge. It's setting up a really stark contrast between the saints of the Old Covenant and believers today.
Let's just look at this for a second. Think about Abraham. The man left everything, his home, his family, everything he knew, for a promise that, in his day, ultimately led to Sheol, the realm of the dead. Today, the promise on the table isn't Sheol. It's the kingdom of heaven itself. The stakes and the reward are infinitely higher.
Or take someone like King David. The source points out how he wept so bitterly for a generation that couldn't yet enter heaven. His tears were for a door that was shut. So the sermon poses the question, if he cried that hard for a closed door, why don't we cry with effort and joy for a reward that's eternal and a door that is wide open?
And how about Israel in the desert? They struggled and toiled for 40 years through incredible hardship, all for a temporary plot of land. I mean, the point the sermon is making is just staggering. We are being offered an eternal kingdom, and yet, how much do we really toil for it?
This whole comparison, it really boils down to this one simple, powerful metaphor. The Old Covenant saints, they lived in the age of leaves, a time of shadows and promises, before the plant had actually produced anything. But us, we live in the age of fruit. This is the time of fulfillment, the time when the harvest is actually ready.
And this leads to the sermon's absolutely mind-blowing conclusion about grace in this new era. It's just in awe of a God who acts like a merchant selling a priceless treasure, the entire kingdom of heaven, for the smallest acts of charity, for a piece of bread, for a cup of cold water given in his name. It's an unbelievable deal. And so, this explainer has to leave us with one final and pretty challenging question. If we live in this age of fruit, and we have access to this incredible reward for such a tiny price, then what is it, really, that's still holding us back?